Hello Morales students, this is Morales with chapter 37.4, Neither Peace Nor War. This is the final part of the chapter on World War II. So, goal is pretty simple, this one's quick. Understand how the end of World War II led to the start of the Cold War. So let's get started. So, it all starts with the Japanese surrender. This is kind of backtracking for section 2. The U.S. was firebombing Tokyo. We had full range to move in. Firebombing in the day in Tokyo, their capital city, means they had little defenses to stop us. During that time, we're going to kill 100,000 people. Tokyo was kind of a mishmash city with some concrete buildings, but lots of the wooden structures, so the firebombs were effective. And we destroyed one quarter of the buildings in Tokyo. Then we dropped the bombs on August 6th and August 9th. Russia declares war on August 8th and enters to back up the United States as part of the deal from the Yalta Conference. And then Emperor Hirohito takes over, makes his prime minister resign, and he surrenders on September 2nd, 1945, which will go down as VJ Day. And that's a big celebration. And that's the official end of World War II. So it ends where it started in Japan. Here's the effects of the bomb. So in the top right corner is a picture of Hiroshima before the bomb, and you can see the buildings all standing up and everything. And then the bottom left is the destruction, and there's tons and tons of pictures of the stuff. So we picked Hiroshima on purpose because it's a populous city. We wanted to see the impact that the bomb had and to prove a serious threat. Lots of reasons. The end result is, depending on the numbers varied substantially. Because some people are counting people who died because of the radiation poisoning that they got, so that they weren't killed instantly, but they died later because of causes associated with it. So numbers vary, but most sources say that instantly in Hiroshima within a day, somewhere around 60,000 people or more were killed, and then Nagasaki 60,000 were killed over the span of it as well. So the two, massive bombs. Keep in mind, the U.S. is the only one to ever use the atomic bombs in actual warfare, and everyone else has just tested them. So this makes us crazy in the other world. Keep this in mind that, hey, there's America. Oh yeah, you guys dropped the atomic bomb. So keep that in mind, okay? Because a lot of times, especially for American kids, we want the world to kind of love us. Well, remember that. So for some reasons, they don't always love us. So we should be respected. We should have some take credit for some of the things, but we also need to take responsibility for some of the things that we did. So I won't get into it too much more, but you got to keep that in mind in the world history perspective. Okay, so why drop the bomb? This is going to set up for why the World War II is the start of the Cold War. The U.S. is the only one to use an atomic bomb in war. Mass destruction and death was certain. We knew for sure, the scientists and all the testing that we did on the bombs, we knew for sure that it would cause massive destruction, and along with it, definitely death. The premise is that we saved lives by ending the war. No one knows exactly in Truman's head what the actual reasons were, but I would think that's more than just. It's not as simple as this one. So the invasion estimates would cost as many as 100,000 to 500,000 lives in trying to take the main island of Japan, because they were adamant about not surrendering. The emperor had told his people not to surrender. They've been indoctrinated or brainwashed essentially into thinking that if the Americans came in, that they would be abused and all sorts of terrible things, mutilated and all sorts of stuff. And so that's why even civilians were fighting to the death with whatever they had. And that was shown in Okinawa and Iwo Jima. And then the other factor that's involved is, and that's not mentioned in the book, but they should be alerted to, is that to show the world the U.S. potential. We have a bomb. We not just have one bomb, we have two, because one could have been an accident. Oh, they got lucky, they can't replicate that. No, but we replicated and we had two bombs and we dropped them, and we're crazy. And essentially, by doing that, we're going to scare Russia, who's already been moving into the Eastern Europe. The agreement was that they're going to have free elections in Europe and try to set that up as according to the Yalta Conference. Well, the USSR had already been moving into this area and trying to solidify and control more and more territory, so that when the war is done, they can dictate what happens in this area. So part of the premise is that to scare Russia. Why? Well, here's why. Hey, get back on the frame here. So There we go. Is that better? Okay, sorry, that was annoying me. So, here's why. This is a chart. It's not the best chart, but it shows the millions in deaths. Check out the red one. That's Russia, 20 million, and that's a lowball estimate. I've seen figures as closer to 30, but somewhere definitely 20 million. 15 million for China. Those are the two big players who get hurt the most. Okay, 6 million for Germany. The kind of bright yellow, and then the lighter yellow is Jews killed. I'm sorry, the brighter yellow is the Jews killed, and then the 4 million for Germany. And the U.S. is in there with the blue little sliver. Okay, less than 300,000 killed. So these are the impact that the war had. Russia was devastated. They got their butts kicked in World War One, and they got their butts kicked in World War Two. Yes, they won, but it was at a great cost. Okay, so this is going to lead to the reasons why it's going to be a big deal. And this, once again, is going to... Oh, I know why. It's because of that chart thing. Okay. So, the origins of U.S., USSR, and Great Britain, they're unnatural. They hate each other. They don't like each other, but they had a group project. You guys have been in group projects where you have to work with people who aren't your best friends, and you just want to get the project done. And as soon as the project gets done, you could go back to not talking to each other. Well, this is their project. Okay, they had to get rid of Germany and Japan, and as soon as it's over, they want to go back to where they were before and not talk to each other or kind of, counter against each other. Remember, there's the Western powers that intervene in the Russian Civil War on the side of the whites to try to defeat the Reds. The Reds end up winning, so there's this feeling of antagonistic distrust and dislike for the other side. Okay. At the two conferences that were held during the war, Yalta and Potsdam conferences, the three groups, the big three, okay, United States, Great Britain, and Russia got together to decide what was going on. Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt met at Yalta, and they decided, how to finalize the war. This is early in 1945, and the war is winding down. And it's just a matter of time. Germany's starting to end, to give up or to lose effectiveness, and so they've decided that they're going to that Russia will help out the U.S. within 3 to 6 months after the war ends in Europe. They're going to help help the U.S. against Japan. Okay. 2, they're going to set up a military tribunal, and then most important, they're going to set up free elections for all the occupied territories of Eastern Europe. France and Great Britain. France is going to go back to what it was. Okay, and that the three powers will work together to make that happen. And then in the areas in control, they're going to make it so they have free elections. Well, Stalin is already arranging by the time this happens. FDR dies in April 1945, so the three groups meet again in Potsdam, and already Stalin has been pushing his way to, he doesn't want to have the free elections because the concern is that they won't pick for commies, and so his concern is that he'll lose these buffer states. And one of the things that the Russians want to do is to put Germany in a bad situation so that they never ever again do something crazy like fight. Okay, and so they want a punishment. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? Okay. Well, the U.S. and the Great Britain in particular, the U.S. more so, wants to make sure that doesn't happen. Stalin arranges for pro-communist governments in Eastern Europe in the areas he's going to control. Okay, and by 1946, essentially an iron curtain has been cut across Eastern Europe. In the areas that are controlled by the Soviets, no one hears what happens. There's no news coming in or out unless it's controlled through the Russians. So it's clear that this free elections and this, self-determination isn't even a word used at this time, okay, that it's not going to happen. With that, Truman, who is very much an anti-communist, when he comes to power, he's very concerned. And people think because he's kind of meek-looking guy that he's not going to step up and do anything. Well, he comes up with this thing called the Truman Doctrine, that he sees it as that the world is in a situation where people are having to choose between one side or the other. And he's clear in a sense that he's talking about what he's talking about. I mean, he doesn't name them, but it's very clear that he's talking about the United States and their capitalist system, and the Soviet Union and their communistic socialist system, and that the world's divided into free and enslaved states. Who do you think the free would be according to him? It's obviously the U.S., and the enslaved would be the groups that are under control by the Soviet Union. And he pledges in the Truman Doctrine to support all movements for democracy, okay, against any type of enslavement by socialist and or communistic groups. So with that, the pledge of what's called containment, to try to contain communism from spreading. If we go back to that old adage or the dictum that they have, is that in order for communism to succeed, it must eliminate all capitalism. Well, if you contain it, it won't spread, and therefore you protect yourself. So with that, they create the two groups, the NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is kind of a club. It's a alliance, okay, a self-protection, okay, the group protection. No one would be crazy enough to attack one group or one person from the group, because they know that all the group would come in to defend it. And so the Soviets counter with their Warsaw Pact, and that right there is essentially the Cold War. Okay, if one side does something, the other side has to retaliate with something else, and it creates this idea of this militarization. The problem is, if you fight the Cold War, one group has atomic bombs, okay, and this could be very, very devastating. Early on, the U.S. had an advantage. We'll talk more about it later. But by 1949, guess who has the bomb? And now things are balanced out. And one of the groups is crazy enough to use it. The other one, they've already proven that they are crazy enough to use it because they did use it. So a couple atomic bombs thrown out in the world can ruin your day. The next thing is they want to change what happened with World War I. So the U.S. institutes this thing called the Marshall Plan, which people in America hated. They were going, "What are you doing, spending money on this stuff?" I don't know what that guy's date in there. Marshall dies in 1981. But his plan was, okay, to rebuild Europe, okay, and to help them to rebuild their democracy and their capitalist system, okay, by giving them $13 billion to reconstruct. And people are going, "Crazy, what are you doing?" And he says, look, by giving them this money, they're going to reconstruct, they're going to rebuild factories, they're going to rebuild roads, they're going to do all sorts of stuff so they can get going, and we can sell them stuff. So this money will come back to America in many cents, and also keep them from going commie by helping to provide for them for jobs and infrastructure and rebuilding all the stuff. And also you're not punishing them, so that places like Germany don't get punished so severely like they did in World War I and then resort to World War II. Whereas the Russians, man, they want to punish Germany, and they want to keep Germany in check, because in World War I they lost 11 million, in World War II they lost 22 million. If there's a World War III, the Russians are really afraid that they're going to get beat up, and who's the cause for most of this? Germany. So the two sides don't see eye to eye on how to rebuild Europe. The U.S. institute the Marshall Plan. The USSR establishes a Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, Comecon. Okay, not that one with the cartoons. Okay. With comics. This one is Comecon, and they don't have as much money to offer, but they do offer trade and support, and in particular military influence, meaning, look, you're going to join this because you're under our protection and you don't have much to say. The United Nations is formed to try to alleviate international tension. That's one thing that does come out of this later on. It's not the Marshall Plan tied directly, but this is an outcome. And at that point, they set up the Council of the USSR and the United States and Great Britain and France, and I can't remember who else, are the inner circle, and they have a lot of power and influence what's going on. But already you can see the antagonistic nature that exists between the U.S. and the USSR, in which will set up what's called the Cold War. Hey, we're done.